I'm going to show you how you can reduce frizz in high humidity so you can have more defined curls even if you'll be spending lots of time outside. I'm Delilah and I help people with curly hair like you get better at caring for and styling their hair so you can simplify your routine and wear your curls with confidence. So styling your hair to last in humidity is actually a little bit more complicated than it seems. You would think that you just throw on some sort of hard hold gel and you're good to go, but it does take a little bit of science, some knowledge, some testing to figure out what it is that works in high humidity. Now, I live in Central Florida, so I can say I'm an expert at this, and I have been struggling with frizz and humidity my whole life. And since embracing my curls over 10 years ago, I have gotten really good and figured out exactly what it is that works to have the least amount of frizz in high humidity. So if you use the right products and techniques, you can ensure that your style will have minimal frizz in humid conditions. And if you watch until the end, I'll show you how you can get nearly frizz-free definition that lasts, and it works really well in high humidity. It's actually my go-to styling method when I want my curls to last in the humidity. So let's go over the 5 tips for reduced frizz in humidity. Now I'm going to start off with the most important tip, number 1, and that is to use styling products that have humidity resistant ingredients in them. This is the biggest one. If you just make one change or if something has the biggest impact, it's going to be this. Humidity resistant ingredients are really key to preventing that frizz that you usually get when it's humid outside. The way that these ingredients work is they form a barrier on the hair called a film that blocks the humidity from entering and swelling the hair, and thus allows it to hold its definition for much longer. I like to think of it like a raincoat. You've got your hair, and then you've got this polymer, which is the humidity resistant ingredient, and then you've got the environment outside. And so you've got this raincoat here in the middle, and it's not able to pass through. So that's basically how these work. These ingredients are polyquats or polymers, and there are so many different polyquats out there. It's not as simple as just looking at an ingredients list and seeing a polyquat and thinking, oh yeah, this works. Some polyquats are just there for softening the hair, for conditioning the hair, for shine, some reduce frizz, but a couple of polyquats will create that barrier and they will hold the hair as well. So they not only do they create the barrier, but they provide some hold, which is also really key in high humidity. Now, I've mentioned polyquats a couple times, but it's polymers in general. So there's others like acrylates polymer, others will say like copolymer, but basically these are all synthetic ingredients that will create that barrier on your hair. So a couple of ones that you can look out for are polyquat 69, acrylates copolymer, PVP and VPVA polymer, copolymer, I forget how that one's called. And a couple other polyquats would be, they all kind of have like a number at the end, so it'll be polyquat with a number. So 69 is probably the best one. There's also 70, 72, 11, 10, 4, and 28. Ideally, you want to use products that have a mix of humidity resistant ingredients in them, and you want them to be closer to the top of the ingredients list. Now, you don't want them to have like 5 polyquats in there, because polyquats are a little more difficult to remove. They're similar to silicone, so you need stronger shampoos. You need to be clarifying more regularly. So the more that's in a product, the heavier the product is, which can be problematic if you struggle with your hair getting weighed down. And it's something that you kind of have to play with and kind of have to determine if you want to block out the humidity and reduce frizz, or do you want to have more volume and more lightweight products. You can't really have both when you're using these types of products, because you need something really strong that's actually going to work. So I will take the humidity protection because that means I'm washing my hair less often, I'm styling my hair less often, so I won't have as much volume, it won't feel as nice and soft, but I'm okay with that. It's price I'm willing to pay. So rattling off the top of my head a couple of products that I know have these ingredients that work well. First up is my absolute favorite, the Ouidad Advanced Climate Control Stronger Hold Gel, and it's the one that's in the red bottle. I think the name is actually longer than that, but it's such a ridiculously long name. But this one works really well. It gives you that hard hold. Some people say it could be a little drying. I don't find it drying. I find it to be a little bit on the heavier side, but it works really well for the humidity. So, you know, like I said, it's a price I'm willing to pay. If it's one that dries your hair out a little bit, then just layer some extra cream or leave-in underneath, and that should fix it for you. The Twist Weather Up Gel is really good too. It's a lighter version with a more medium hold. Doesn't work as well as the Ouidad, but it's very similar and it's got nice ingredients and it's great if you need something that's more lightweight. Jessie Curl Spiralicious is another one that I am loving lately. This one is similar to the Ouidad in that it's a little bit thicker, heavier, but the ingredients are different, and I think it's one that would work well for all hair types. It gives you a nice hard hold, creates a good cast, and it works in all types of weather. Now, Curlsmith has a couple of gels that work really well in high humidity. The Hydro Style Flexa Jelly, which is the one in the bottle, not the one in the jar. The Shine Gel, which is one of their newer gels, and the In Shower Style Fixer. So those three are ones that would work really well. I would say the In Shower Style Fixer is the heaviest one with the hardest hold, and the Hydro Style Flexa Jelly is probably the most flexible, lightweight one, but it works really well, gives me a nice cast, and it's really light on my hair, so I like using that one. Now, the second tip is probably not going to be a surprise to you. It is to use hard hold products. This may be easy if you take into account the first tip I gave you and you start using products that have polyquats and polymers in them, because those also increase the hold of a product. So when you're dealing with high humidity, something like a curl cream or a foam is usually not going to cut it. Those have lightweight hold, sometimes they'll have a medium hold, but they're not going to have these stronger humidity resistant ingredients in them. It's really rare to find like a cream or a foam that's going to have these types of ingredients. So I recommend sticking with something like a gel, a custard, and hairspray. Those are the ones that are usually will have the hard hold ingredients in them. So in addition to blocking the humidity out to prevent the frizz, you want to hold these curl clumps in place because the heat and humidity does affect your hair and can cause some frizz. So the hold will allow your style to last a little longer and be frizz free for longer. So look for hard hold products, like I said, gels, custards, and sprays. And sometimes just adding a few spritzes of a good hard hold spray is enough to do the trick. I've mentioned this before, Curlsmith recently came out with 2 sprays that have humidity resistant and hard hold ingredients in them. There's a flexible hold and a hard hold, so I would recommend looking into one of those. You should also check out the video that I did on increasing hold so that your style lasts longer. There's lots of great tips in there that apply to high humidity as well. Now, in talking about harder hold, I want to mention a big mistake that a lot of people make, and that is to use products that are way too moisturizing. It can actually kind of negate the effects of your hard hold products, because the more moisture you have in your routine and in your products, the less hold you're going to have overall. And even though it is true that more moisture reduces frizz, that's pretty much always the case. As I said, this dilutes the styling products. So when you are in high humidity, you need that hold to keep the frizz at bay. So you don't want to dilute it. So in this case, I say stick with deep conditioners and getting your moisture like that, other than layering a bunch of moisturizing products underneath your styling products. Lighter moisture works really well, things with fatty alcohols in them versus really heavy like emollients and thick and creamy products. I would save those for other seasons. Now, this next tip is one that people tend to overlook, and it is that you need to make sure you're including protein in your routine. Protein is really good at holding onto moisture, which we already know we need, without being heavy, and it helps your hair hold its structure, which is so important when the humidity is high. Protein reinforces the disulfide bonds in your hair, and that will keep the frizz at bay in high humidity. So I recommend that you continue with your regular protein treatments. However often works for you is fine, and possibly using conditioning and styling products that have a little bit of protein in them. Don't go crazy with the protein, but maybe you can do your protein treatments a little more often, or just use products that have a little bit more protein than before, because it really does help maintain the structure of your hair and keep the frizz at bay in humidity. Now, another ingredient that you can look for is AntiHumectants. So use products with AntiHumectants, which is the opposite of humectants. AntiHumectants are basically oils and emollients, lipids. So things like butters, waxes, silicone oils, as I mentioned. And you will find these ingredients typically in the more moisturizing, creamier products like leave-in conditioners and creams, and sometimes custards. Some of these tend to be on the heavy side, so just keep that in mind with what I mentioned earlier about using too much moisture. I'm not saying to slather your hair in oils and butters. I'm just saying that use products that have some oils and butters in them, because that's going to help negate the effects of any humectants that are in the products. So I am not telling you to avoid glycerin. I know that's a really big one. Avoid glycerin and humidity, but you can't just look at an ingredients list and pick one ingredient and say, oh, this has glycerin in it, it's not going to work in the humidity, because it's about the whole formulation. And if glycerin is maybe the second ingredient, okay, that could be problematic. But if you've got polyquats in there, AntiHumectants, hold ingredients, and then you've got glycerin as ingredient number 7, it's probably not going to have that negative effect with the humidity. The reason that they put humectants like glycerin in products is because it helps your hair stay moisturized, and it's really lightweight. So it works really well for all hair types. And the problem becomes when you're using stuff that has a lot of humectants in it, or a large amount of humectant in the formulation, without having any of these hold and humidity resistant ingredients. So you have to have those in there as well. So if you look at the WeDad Advanced Control Heat and Humidity Gel, whatever the name of that gel is, you will see that it has glycerin in it. Actually, I have a bottle right here. Let me grab it. This is gel that I'm talking about. It's a little travel size that I use when I travel. So this print is very small, but look, glycerin is the second ingredient after water, but the third ingredient is polyquat 11. Then we have a PEG 75 shea butter, which is a water soluble butter. So there's your emollient. Then we have, I cannot even see that with my eyes, something, I don't know, starts with a G, wheat amino acid, so protein, again, really good for that structure. More protein, PVP copolymer. There's another humidity resistant and hold ingredient, another polyquat 59, another polyquat 10. I'm halfway down the ingredients list now, so I've already listed off a couple of different humidity resistant ingredients, some AntiHumectants, and hold ingredients. And yeah, glycerin was the second ingredient, but notice how the whole formulation matters. So I don't want you to kind of like zone in on one ingredient and just write off a product. If it's a gel that has glycerin in it and aloe, and then you don't see anything else, okay, set that one aside, that's not gonna work in the humidity. But when you've got all these other ingredients in there, then it doesn't really matter. So just do keep that in mind. Now this last tip is one that I have recently discovered works really well for longevity, and is especially key when the humidity is high, and that is to brush style your hair. Now, I know that not everybody is open to this. Some people haven't figured it out quite yet. It can be cumbersome and tedious and take a long time. I get it, because I like a quick routine. I don't like stuff that takes a long time. I don't want to spend an hour on my hair. I'm with you. That's not what I'm asking you to do. So my recommendation is to use a brush, like a styling brush that creates those nice ribbon curls and curl clumps as you're styling your hair. I don't want you to do every individual curl clump, but when you apply your products and you brush it through with these brushes, it really distributes the product really well, and it smooths your curl clumps out so that they create that nice little ribbon curl clump, whatever you want to call it, that has like the least amount of frizz you can possibly have, and then you dry it in that shape. And so that's just a lot more effective at styling with reduced frizz than any other way to style. If you pair that with the right products, then this is just a winning solution for high humidity. Again, I'm not telling you to like brush style your hair and spend, 20 minutes. I'm just talking about brushing it through and then break those clumps up and scrunch a little bit, and I'll actually show you exactly what I mean in a minute. So now you've got these 5 tips to keep frizz at bay in high humidity. What's your next step? First, I recommend you grab my Curly Girls Guide to Humidity Styling, which is going to give you all these tips and more, along with some product recommendations, and it's free. You can just head to the link that I have in the description. You can sign up. All you need to give is your name and email address, and once you hit that submit button, it will be sent right to your inbox. Then the next step after that would be to learn how to style for ultimate definition, like I was just talking about with tip number 5. If you really want to have minimal frizz in high humidity, then I recommend you watch this video next. It's called Modified Flip Section Method, and you'll learn how to easily and quickly brush style for ultimate definition that will keep frizz to a minimum in high humidity. Just click the video you see on the screen and I'll see you there.